How are you finding those pockets of places where people are not looking?
It's not how do you find the pockets. It's how do you change the way you look. The pockets are in front of everyone. The question is, how do you change the way you see things?
I'm Sean Green, founder and CEO of ARTERNAL. Over the course of the last decade plus, I've been building relationships in this opaque world of fine art. Primary focus, selling software. I've made a lot of friends along my journey. Some of them you'll know, others you'll meet. Come step into the art world with me and my friends. Well, thank you for the hospitality.
My pleasure. Did you get some apples?
I got some apples.
Those weird fungi looking like pink and white ones?
I didn't get the is my lip bleeding apple.
Okay, not yet, yeah.
But I did choose to find your compost. I tossed it somewhere. I saw you do it.
You know, everyone shouts at me for doing it, but I watched this this documentary about this photographer, Sebastian Salgado. Do you know him? He's a great photographer. He went around the world for 20 years photographing all forms of labor, India, Afghanistan. He did a book called Workers, one of the great photographers of the last 20 years. And he bought a place, I think in Brazil or somewhere, and the trees were dying in the forest. And they just sort of started throwing like compost, like oranges and all this stuff. And 20 years later, there was a forest there. So whenever I eat an apple, I go outside, think of Sebastian Salgado, and toss it in my backyard. And I reckon it's better than putting in the bin. Then the insects can eat it, the birds. So if Rosie sees me doing it, she shouts at me. That's going to take 4 weeks to decompose. But I'm like,
she might shout at me because I tossed mine.
You just tell her it's my apple. It's fine. You just blame me. Everyone blames me, so it's easy. I'm used to that.
On that note, welcome to Step Into the Art World.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I stepped in it already, like
a little bit ago.
Yeah.
As I was thinking about this conversation, I was like, the guests that I've had so far, pretty down the fairway, you know, in terms of like collecting, what they do professionally, et cetera. And then I was like, this is going to be a refreshing conversation.
You mean less Banana Republic guest, and more like yeah.
We didn't have Banana Republic.
I'm kidding. No, Joyce Simmons, your first guest, is by no means Banana. I'd say she's extremely unique and extraordinary. She's a good friend of mine. I've been to her house several times, met her husband, who I love.
Oh, Apollos is great.
And he's an art collector as well. You know, one of my favorite experiences was went to Joyce's house, and I went to hang out with him and watch his ant colony in his office, where the ants eat through the stuff. It's really amazing. And I have a lot of respect for her. Very unique, and it would be great if there were more people like Joyce. The problem is there's so few. There needs to be more. There's like, everyone's like, yeah, Joyce is great. I like Beth DeWoody. She's great. But we need 20 Joyce Simmonses. We need 20 Beth DeWoodys. We just have one. That's not enough. This is one of the enduring problems of the art world. They're outliers, these people. They're you know, and I think, you know, it would be great if they weren't so unique in character, that there were more of them. It'd be helpful for the business. So the property was a 1 acre property with 16 oak trees that we ran as an artist residency, and then we renovated to turn into sort of a creative space. You're going to come in here and see Serge Tukw's show. Come in, they're working, and Rosie does all the work. This is my wife Rosie and her brother Joseph. They're doing naughty things, yeah. I'll tell you why. So that's an exhibition by Serge Tukwe. So there's eight structures on the property. They all have different functions: workspace, exhibition space. Serge is a Ghanaian artist I work with, who I've worked with since 2014. He's one of the leading Ghanaian artists. These works on paper here are a new body of work.
I was going to say, I have not seen work like this by Serge. When you mentioned that, I thought this was two different artists.
Well, he's got young kids now. The kids draw on the walls of his house in Ghana. And he likes their drawings so much that he's sitting there and copying the kids' drawings and coloring them in.
Wow.
And sort of like appropriating the children's drawings. And he's literally, the kids have got, you know, pencils and everything, and they drawing all over the house. The whole house looks like this. So he's just taking segments and making paintings of the kids' drawings and kind of taking that childlike language and adapting it into an adult professional art. And they're so beautiful. These are simple ones. He's done bigger ones that are more complex. Wow. It's a new body. I think it's just extraordinary.
Beautiful. Now, that segue allows me to segue into being misunderstood.
I'm misunderstood?
No, in general. You know,
I need to have some more
people
coffee.
being misunderstood. Yourself in the art world has been termed by the New York Times as the patron Satan of the art world.
Yep.
What did they get wrong about Stefan?
Well, I think, you know, that was 10 years ago today, that New York Times Magazine story. It was a really interesting process. Christopher Glazik, who wrote the piece, it's very interesting going through like a mainline press cycle, New York Times, Economist, Wall Street Journal. You really learn a lot about how journalistic process kind of works. You know, Glazik put in that story, and the editors then take that proof and they remove stuff. And really they tell the story by what they remove. And there were like key lines in that article. It was a 10-page article. There were key lines like, I could never find evidence of Stefan harming an artist's career. Because he published on this website he had the unedited version. A New York Times editor removed that section. And something that people may not know is when writers submit to the New York Times, the editorial board, the editor always chooses the title. It's never the writer. And the writer doesn't veto the title. So the Art World's Patron Satan was not a title chosen by Christopher Glazik, it was chosen by the editors. And so I think what I've learned from the press cycle, first of all, you know, I think how you respond to press either helps you or harms you. I kind of, you know, use that energy, the sort of negative energy to, you know, it was useful to me. I understood how to do it. It's like Aikido, you know, it comes at you, and a lot of people are like that, but like you use it and you kind of like, and it's sort of an art because press needs people to read stuff, and I think, you know, negative press is more legible, and you know, he's a great guy. But I think what's interesting is during that time when I was going back and forth with Jerry Saltz, when he, you know, wrote the kind of Vulture magazine articles and reviews, there was much more banter on Facebook and social media. Today, I think the enduring myth when people Google, they find that patron Satan bad guy. It's you know, people are, it sort of sticks today in a much more insidious way. But I'm grateful for it because, you know, it made me one of the better known, or one of the, you know, definitely one of the you know, more well-known people in the art world. And what's even more interesting, it didn't just make me known in America, but in every corner of the earth you go to, they know, you know, so I like from Chile, Iceland. So whether it helps or hurts, I don't know. But all I know is people all over the world in every country know if they're artists that, you know, there's this crazy guy in California.
So it's been a bit polarizing, which doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt if you're comfortable with only being invited to certain dinner parties. If you're comfortable walking to a room full of people and like half the people like turn their back on you and the other half are very nice. If you can deal with that, most people don't like that. They want to be liked. It's sort of a popularity contest. If you accept the conditions that it's not a popularity contest, that you're there to do something and engineer something that you think is important, if you have a vision, you know, my vision isn't to be invited to every dinner at every gallery and to you know, spend my life flying around the world, going to every art fair and being, you know those dinners, those long dinners where you have the name tag and, you know, it's 2 knives and forks and you know, and you have a bad meal but it looks good. You know, I have an idea of where I want to go, what I'm trying to build, and an idea of how I want to re-engineer the art world on many levels. And then we'll go down here.
Sweet.
And we'll come into this structure where
Have you named the structures?
We have. There's a map on our website.
Okay.
It's a Hill House. This is called
Yeah.
the garage. They all have different names. We can go through it. This is a Shana McCoy show. Shana, you know well, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Artist from Minneapolis we've worked with for a number of years. And we had, so this is a solo show of hers. She took over several of the spaces and we had an opening. And you know, this room is so, you're trying to make the rooms more, we had galleries all over town that we closed. Make the rooms more domestic so you can sit on the couch, listen to music, and people sit here. And you know, it's difficult to tell people to look at a painting at an opening. But you get them to look at a painting by listening to music, and they end up looking at the painting for like 10, 20 minutes, and then they start actually seeing the painting.
Right.
Because people don't look anymore, they're too fast. Everything's too fast. You've got to figure out how to slow them down. Play some music, R&B, jazz. They're listening, people, it captures them, and then they start looking. They start noticing things.
When did you meet Shana?
I met her online. I saw a picture on Instagram. I think it was 2014 or so, and she was working at a hotel as a receptionist. I think she was 21 years old.
Wow.
You know, making like not a lot of money in Minneapolis. And I saw a little work of hers, like that. She was making work that size.
Right, on the wall. Yeah.
And I mean, and I was like, it was almost like quit your job. You know, you're full time now.
Thick skin, I hear in there, a bit of that.
Thick skin. I have thick skin. I've developed thick skin. You know, South Africans. I'm a South African. South Africans have thick skin. You know, it's like you grow up in South Africa is a crazy place to grow up, and even if you're affluent, it's Africa. It's a different. You know, there are a lot of South African businessmen who, you know, I'm not going to mention, but they're thick-skinned people. They drive. You know, but yeah, thick skin is a good thing for some.
Right. Now, speaking of, you know, coming from a background that has means, you mentioned, you know, you come from privilege.
Absolutely.
Now, has that helped you in the art world in any capacity, or?
It could have.
Okay.
It could have.
Expand on that.
I think I could have taken a path where I come from privilege, and you got to follow a pathway, because the art world, you know, if you come from privilege, has a door open for you to access but you got to be polite. And I'm not polite, and I'm combative. So I've kind of like, I'm privileged in that, you know, privilege has so many different levels. Number one, I'm a white guy in America. You're privileged automatically. Two, if you have any form of affluence, you're privileged. So it works on many levels. But from the art world, I'm privileged in that I met Jeffrey Deitch when I was 19, you know. So you can't decouple your access and privilege. But I definitely did not use that privilege to make sure that I was at every art fair, at every VIP opening. I was polite. I could have just sort of traded Basquiat's and Picasso's and Warhol's and you know, tried to access, you know, become an ADA art advisor and, you know, go to David's Work. I chose not to have that path. But I chose not to have that path because I am privileged. Because I'm privileged that the risks that I can take are much greater than people with privilege. So I think some people use privilege to be like, I want to be on the boat in the south of France in Saint-Tropez. I'm going to have my summers in the south of France. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be in Basel in September. I'm going to get access to the best work. I'm going to be polite. I'm going to be friends with the artists. I'm going to be interviewed about my great collection and show you my most expensive wares of art. Or you can say, I'm going to use privilege and take huge amounts of risk, both personally, socially, and financially. And I think I chose the latter. And I'm like, well, I've got privilege. So why don't I have a go? You know,
Right.
why don't I use that privilege to have a go and try and change a business that I think is inherently unfair, inherently homogenized, inherently a prisoner to the enormous amounts of capital that have entered the system since the 80s, and that have denuded the cultural experience into a homogeneous and problematic expression of global inequality, whereby everyone is consuming the same kind of product, same kind of experience, and same kind of art. And I think I have like a multitude of different strategies that I've implemented to counteract that and change that on many different levels. And also it's been developed because as someone with privilege, I have had the access and benefit of my whole life hanging out with people with privilege, of seeing what they're like, of understanding what it's like to come from a wealthy family, of understanding when I meet kids working in the art business that they come from rich families, and you know, understanding when I look at the big gallery system, so many of those people in those systems come from very wealthy families, and watching how they behave, and a lot of times wondering, you come from such a rich family, why do you have to be such a serpent? Why do you have to be such a snake? Why do you have to be so sneaky? Can't you actually stand for something? Your next meal is paid for. Your house is paid for. Your education's paid for. Why do you have to choose that world? The art world is not a singular thing. The art world is a multitude of things. There's not one art world. There's tens of thousands of art worlds in India, Afghanistan, China, Iceland. It's many things. But the mainline art world that we participate in is really the expression of power and culture, social dynamics. And if you can modify how that art world works, I think you can filter that down through the structures, change how the elites operate. I think the art world is a place where the commodity of art is traded, but within that trade is a commodity and exchange of ideas, where ideas are themselves commodified. And if you can influence how ideas are commodified and what idea is a valuable commodity, you can then slowly move down the chain and sort of filter things out. Art works also on a different timeline. It doesn't work like tech. It doesn't scale that quickly, but ideas do scale. Ideas do carry through time and space and are very powerful over long distances. And I think culture and art are truly like trees. They grow slowly and you don't notice them. They rip up pavements and they'll eventually take out anything in the way. And if those ideas are right, they'll do good for the world.
You mentioned trade. I think of sometimes the way how people view an artist as a tradable commodity.
Yeah.
Do you think you can look at artists' artwork as stocks?
No.
Do you think that you can day trade art?
No. But you can trade art. You can trade it. You can trade everything. You just can't trade it like a stock. It's not a stock. I always use the example of a nurse. A nurse is a nurse has to be professionally trained to provide service in an emergency room or a hospital. And a nurse can do a bunch of tasks. But a nurse, to be good, needs to have a very specific quality called empathy. Mm-hmm. And that is going to make a good nurse great, and a bad nurse good, and a great nurse bad. And empathy is something you can't trade, but it is a quality that makes a nurse better and more valuable. So I think everything that humans do, manufacture, produce, whether they're services or products, are a commodity, because the only way in today's world we relate to things is through the commodification of how capital and resources distribute these things. I think this attempt by sort of intellectual liberals, moralists, to sort of say art is not a commodity is problematic, because they try and say something is not what it is, and therefore they have to pretend that it is something that it isn't, and then you have hypocrisy and pretense entering. Instead of saying it is what it is, but how can we make it something that's tradable, but with quality? So like, no, it's not something you can trade as a day trade. It's something that you have to trade over 25 years. It's something that you have to trade by investing in an artist. And then you can stop playing this sort of pretense game. And so much of the business is based on sort of pretense and hypocrisy, the two sort of great sort of conditions of the disease of the current art.
Where do you play?
I play in between like a joker in a pack of cards, you know, because I have to navigate. I have to be in the main line. I have to be off the main line. I'm trying to do things in a different way. So I have to be quick, adapt, and I have to have a business. So I need to remain in business. If there are opportunities that I see that I can access, I take the slip. You know what I mean? But I hold my hand up when I do, and I'm like, yes, sir, I sold that at auction. Yeah, I don't pretend through like intermediary, and I'm not like, you know.
So on that point, in terms of selling at auction, I think about the ARTNET story that the Amawako ARTNET
Boafa story, yeah.
right? And I think it's a very interesting one. How do you think you were characterized in that particular story?
Well, I think it was cliched. I think what I saw with Amawaka Boafa, because I know the market really well, is I saw, you know, what happens in the market. There are sort of, you see these people make plays in the business. And there are different characters in different countries that make plays. And I saw and understood that they were going to make a play with Amawaka. The play was intact. I'm not part of that syndicate. I'm not part of that play. But I know what I know when those plays are going down. I can read it. You know, and I knew the play was happening. I knew if I got a piece, it was first to auction, they'd have to defend the play because they needed a high price out the gate. There was no ways they wanted me to be the guy throwing that piece at auction because they didn't want to pay me for it. They wanted that play to be internalized, so the capital stayed within the system. And there are these plays, and I recognized, you know, and that article was interesting because, you know, what was interesting is being characterized as this demon of the you know, what was unusual about that play as opposed to other plays is the artists are in on the play. You know, it's not, you know, what you see now in the market is it's not like a syndicate of buyers in a play and the artist is like this. The artists are actually in the play with the syndicates. And that's very interesting. Something I never saw before. 2011, the first market, the Oscar Murillo market, you know, the first wave where I was introduced to the market, you know, Lucian, Oscar, the New York Times article, and then that wave sort of collapsed, and then we had the new wave, which is even more crazy than the second wave. But the difference is, I think this is because of social media, because of direct contact with artists, is the artists are in on the play now. And I saw things that were so crazy and so naked, and I just took the gate, you know. I'm like, okay, I support a lot of artists in Africa. I've been supporting artists in Africa since 2010. I've been, you know, I was engaged with Ibrahim Mahama prior to the Venice Biennial, prior. In fact, you know, my financing of Ibrahim, I think, was responsible for him doing Venice. Y-Cube got involved. I've been on the continent before it was cool to be on the continent. And I'm still on the continent now that it's no longer cool to be on the continent because that market has collapsed. And I still believe in Africa as a fundamental, absolutely fundamental and critical producer of culture in the world. And I think the way that the last few years sort of took figuration off the continent was very deeply problematic. And also,
why?
Because Africa, the production coming out of the continent, I'm involved everywhere, Uganda, Kenya, literally everywhere, Nigeria, we've got a residency program in Cape Town. The creativity in materials, in ideas is so sophisticated and so ambitious and so vast and so widespread. The scale of Africa is enormous. And boiling it down to a bunch of guys who went to, that school in Ghana and taught them how to be, figurative painters, it's just not adequate. This is the music room. So I started a new business called Simco Audio, where we curate systems, put together beautiful sort of music systems for people to listen to music. Mm-hmm. And it's, come in and, get some art, get some music in your life. Proper music, not the stuff in the ceiling, that Sonos, Bluetooth shit, the proper stuff, the stuff that actually like you listen to music with. I'm not going to tell you what all the brands are, but it's good.
Yeah, no, it's great. Who's
Tyler,
this?
Tyler Macko from Ohio, an artist I've been working with for a while. Incredible artist, you know, this kind of outsider artist, but taking that language really to like this maximalist large scale production. This is the Tin Man, and it's an amazing piece if you think about it. Incredible work. And this is Lila. And Lila's a good artist. And then we'll come over here. This is my book, very important. Bloody Hell, Simchowitz. It's my photo book of portraits, of flowers.
You're always carrying your camera.
Floral photography. And so I am a photographer. So Petra Courtright, Lisa, who works with me, did this beautiful drawing of nuns. Look how beautiful that is. Isn't that crazy good?
Yeah. I didn't know that she was creating.
This is a guest room, so artists stay here. We have always guests here. I think last night we had 8 people in the house. Right. So it's really like activated. Yeah. Artists, curators, designers, customers, clients. The space is, it's not so much a home as like a showroom with bedrooms, if you know what I mean. It's a completely different concept. I wanted to animate. The gallery space is the Y Cube. We'll talk about the Y Cube when we sit down and give you my thoughts about it. Holly Lowen is an artist I work with, amazing new young artist.
Beautiful. How old?
30s.
Wow.
Petra Courtright's mother, Penny, did this. And this is a beautiful Shayna, of course.
Yeah.
You know, so again, like you really get, what's nice about here, you really get to confront her texture. Like these balls, they're, you know, look at them. Yeah. That's a paintball applied, you know, 1,000 paintballs. Yeah. Incredible work of art.
She's phenomenal.
And also, like, there's no faces, because what I like about Shayna's work, she's saying to you, you know, that all of us have the same experience of the nostalgia of our family photographs from when we were growing up. So it's not faceless, like we don't have a face and are not seen, like identity politics bullshit. Right. What she's saying is we are all the same. It's not faceless to like represent the faceless identity of blackness. It's there to say you can imprint your face here and we all share the same common experience.
Right. We've all been there.
We've all been there.
In this photograph.
No matter who you are, white, black, light skin, dark skin. I love this, you know, about her work. It's really, you know.
The power in shared experiences.
Exactly, of all. You know, what we saw in 2021 with the rise of kind of the social movements, broadly speaking, I think you saw a kind of a fascist aesthetic architecture attached to those movements. So if you look at social realism, which is effectively the art of the Soviet Union, the art of fascists, big figures, raunchy, you know, those Mussolini figures, like North Korea has an art production facility called Mansundai Studios. Interesting place. You can hire artists at Mansundai Studios to make art for you, not allowed to hire them to make abstract work. Mansundai produces some of those huge monumental sculptures in Africa. I don't know if you've seen them. They're massive. They're social realist sculptures. And what they taught at the Ghanaian art schools effectively was social realism. And in fact, when you see a lot of the other figurative artists producing it's social realism, it's big strength. You know, they look different. They don't look like Soviet workers from the 1920s, but they manifest the overwhelming strength of identity and character. It's social realism. It's a fascist aesthetic imprinted on a liberal set of values, that represent an identity politics, but it's ultimately fascist at the core. This is a problem. It's not taking artists from the continent who are making, you know, really innovative work that is more akin oftentimes to what happened in Europe in the post-war period with the Arte Povera movement or the Zero movement, where, you know, materials, you know, were collected to make the fontanas and the manzonis. You're seeing a lot of that kind of production. Serge Tukwe-Clotti, the artist I work with, has a great saying. He says, goods are free to migrate, but people are not.
What does he mean by that?
Well, it means that we can take goods and gold and iron and copper from Africa and send it to America and Europe, but people in Africa can't come to America to seek opportunity and labor or come to Europe. Goods are free to migrate. And we can also, when we have our trash, we can send it to Zimbabwe where the trash piles of keyboard keys get taken, or Ghana where the clothes get taken, or the Kafur gallons that he uses for art. And I think there's a lot of great production in Africa of repurposing this waste, the true environmental art of the world, not this like I'm having a panel talking about environment, where they're transforming this work into materials. Serge does it with the plastics, Mofa Takidawa does it with the keys. I work with an artist in Zimbabwe, Julia Rizzi, who does it with resins and chicken wire.
How are you finding these artists? Because incredible work, they're producing, but how are you actually finding them?
I find them really at their infancy. Each story is different. Serge, I found when I saw him on Instagram doing a political protest performance, wearing a loincloth, carrying a briefcase in the middle of the street in Ghana. For some reason, I sent him a message, come to LA, sent him a ticket, he arrived, and the journey began. I usually find artists really before at the seed level. Shayna was working at a hotel in Minneapolis, and I see something, and some of my instinct understands that by providing capital, but more important than capital is capital over a long distance of time. So like, if that rose bush over there needs water, it doesn't need a dump of water in an hour. It needs to be watered every day for a year to grow. Artists are the same. And the system does not take that into account. The system needs you ready to go, art fair, sell, we're going to sell out. And
How are you building the trust?
Over time. Trust is built over time. Trust is built over time. Trust is difficult. It's a big issue. The art world, there's been a lot of breaches of trust in the art world, and which I think one of the enduring problems in the art world currently is there is no trust between artist and gallerist. The small gallery signs the artist. The artist, before they even showing with the first gallery, is thinking about the second gallery. Before they're showing with the second gallery, they're even thinking about Gagosian. So you're dealing with people who want this immediately. I've worked with Petra Kortright since 2011. Never had a conversation about David Zwirn or Gagosian. I don't care. She doesn't care. She's a mother. She's got 2 houses. She wants to have a family. Wants to make art. And she has a consistent production profile, makes art consistently. It's very difficult to find artists like that. But that ambition, if you call it ambition, I call it thirst trap, is something that makes many of them fail. It's a long, long road. Now, of course, eventually Petra, when she's 60, 70, my network might be big enough for Gagosian, but I think the trust has been broken in the business, and that also has weakened the quality of production in the business because there's no development, and young artists need development. They're like R&D systems. They need development. You're taking undeveloped product to market. The gallery systems have expanded so dramatically in the last decade. Zwirn, Gagosian, there's so many spaces, so many shows. They need content. Right. They're like empty vases with no flowers in them. So they're just dumping flowers in. Like, one of the things that I've seen in the last 5 years is big galleries showing artists and pricing them in ways that are just insane. But like artists who I wouldn't even have bought at their seed stage of infancy because they're not good. But those systems are so thirsty and so disconnected from the development process because they don't understand development. They don't have time for development, that they're just like, okay, this has got some pedigree, we're going to dump it here. And the market's chaotic now. And a lot of collectors are sort of, because there's less liquidity in the market now, interest rates are kind of high, liquidity is being taken out of the market. Those are beginning to sort of harm the actual business. And there's no place. You need to develop good art.
In terms of collecting, as you mentioned, when did you start collecting, and when did you consider yourself an actual collector?
Like when I was 7, when I was collecting stamps, probably. But I in the art business, I think 2007, 8, I lived in New York, and I lived around the corner from Deitch, and I started going to Jeffrey's Gallery. And I started kind of like low level, just seeing the art, didn't have much money to buy it. And then I started collecting. I'd say it started 2008, 9, 10. Started doing some advising, low level advising, and then started collecting and building a collection. But I was there 2008, Joe Bradley, Schmagoos, the line drawing, Sterling Ruby. I bought his first spray painting. I walked into Metro Pictures, there was a painting on the wall. I was like, how much is it? Like, boom. I was like, I'll buy it. I was like, who's the artist? Sterling Ruby. It was his first spray painting. Like, so I always was able to see somehow. I don't know why, but I can see. And I like the young art. I mean, I think Shayna's show is as good as anything I see in the marketplace today, as good. And then I sort of built this kind of industrial scale collecting system, because with the development of artists, I kind of, I learned a lot. I saw the Joe Bradley market go from, I remember buying 8 paintings from him for $4,000 a painting from the gallery from Canada, 2008, when things collapsed. A couple of years later, he was with Gagosian selling for $1 million a painting. So I learned a lot from that. So when Oscar came along, instead of buying 4, I bought 40.
Now,
and I sort of just increased I trusted my eye, and I literally had 45 Oscar Murillo paintings.
So what's the conversation with Oscar to get him to agree to?
No one was buying the work. There was no customers. Like, if you think people want to sell me work, they don't. There were no clients. No one wanted it. I remember so clearly going to a show. There was David Kordansky was over there at Black Welder, before he moved, and Mihai Nicodem, smaller guy, was next door, and he had this show. Everyone was at Kordansky, champagne, cocktails, blah blah blah. I went to Mihai. No one remembers the Kordansky show. I went to Mihai. It was an Oscar Murillo show. He was this young guy, and I'll never forget. Oscar had a roll of paintings. He threw them on the floor, and he walked across them to shake my hand. I said, I'm Oscar Murillo. I said, Stefan Simchowitz. I looked down at the floor. I said to Mia, how much are they? He says, they're $3,200. I said, they're $4,000. Will you give me 20%? Sure. $3,200. I said, how many are there? 5. I said, I'd take them all. I never forget. I shook Oscar's hand. That's how I met him. Hillary, his gallery in New York, was coming to town. She had a suitcase full of Oscar Murillo canvases. So I said, come to LA, I'll buy them all. It was like that. There was no market. The thing about it is I never have trouble buying art. Even in the pandemic, when everyone was going crazy, I'm always buying shit that no one wants, always. And then people are being like, can you sell me something like Oscar Murillo? I said, I can, but you got to buy it when no one wants it. And again, the only time they want it is when the momentum's there and the speculative economics are in place. That's the only time. Then this is the big red barn.
Right.
And again, so Shayna's presentation extends into 3 buildings and then goes into the small guest bedroom where you see it in a domestic setting.
Right.
But also this is a music room, and instead of just being empty with no white space, it functions like a solo exhibition, but it has this warmth and kind of like cohesion of a sort of a space that you can actually use, live in, work in, trying to get people to kind of be more comfortable with things like this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you feel like, oh, this is what it will feel like living with this work.
Yeah.
Sitting with this work. Did she create any of the pieces here?
No.
Okay.
No. I think the big thing for me, the exhibition, we began renovating it. Before it was renovated, it was artist studios. Mm-hmm. But I think, as we did it so nicely, we figured, it's so nice. It really needs to be. It needs to be exhibition space. Yeah. And and it's really epic show. This. Yeah. I love this angle.
It's come together beautifully.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
And that's our own audio furniture we make there. We manufacture our own audio furniture now.
Wow.
It's so beautiful.
The wood with the speakers.
Yeah, with that shelf there.
Right.
So it's very exciting.
Nice.
Yeah. I love it.
How are you finding those pockets of places where people are not looking? Because that seems that it creates the opportunity for you.
I'm gonna redirect how you answer that question. It's not how do you find the pockets. It's how do you change the way you look. The pockets are in front of everyone. The question is, how do you change the way you see things? It's not how do you change where you look. It's how do you change what you see in front of you. You either look at Stefan Simchowitz and you say, this guy's a bastard, motherfucker, I'll never sell him art or do business with him. You look at him and you say, this guy, he gets it. I like him. He's a good guy. He's a force for good. It's how you see things. It's not what you see. And that informs your decision-making matrix. It's not the what, it's the how. And it's how you engage in that process. I believe we are in a golden age of artistic production. I believe that for 10, 15 years. There's more art schools, there's more capital, there's more global conversation amongst artists. Artists have more access to see what each other are doing on social media. So I'm not a guy who's like, the 60s were the best time for art production. Bus gets the best. Quite the opposite. I think production globally today is phenomenal. I think there's good art everywhere, but that good art is separated by these vast oceans of inequality, both geographic inequality. You're from Africa, you're from America, you are unequal. You have an American passport, you have a passport from Congo, you're privileged because you have a US passport. Privilege is, when you're talking at a global scale, is so severe. And I think that for me, first of all, I look all over the world. So my viewpoint is not like, I'm going to go to UCLA and sign the artist like at UCLA Open Studios. I have an artist I found who was a maid in Norway in a motel.
What were you doing in Norway?
Nowhere. I saw it on Instagram. I liked it. I sent her a message. She was literally a maid in a motel. We just put one of her artworks, because we have this crazy rental business, in a property in New York. She was so happy about it. Like, changed her life. And I think my field of vision is bigger. And also, I grew up with good art, not good art, great art. I know what the real stuff is.
So you trained your eye, basically.
My eye was not trained. I didn't train it. It was trained. I grew up with the most real of real shit. Like stuff that few people are privileged to have access to in a house. So I know when I look at Shana McCoy, I know it's good shit. Like it's not like I don't know what real stuff looks like.
So given the fact that you've been around this environment, from when you were growing up as a kid, how do you look at it today any different?
I look at it differently. I need to think about this. I mean, as a kid, you're kind of clueless. I mean, it takes time to get enough knowledge. I played you music earlier today, and you guys were really moved because we all understand the language of music, all of us. The language of art is much more difficult to learn because you have to see it, and there are not many places to see it. It's like getting fruit and vegetables in Dayton, Ohio on a regular basis. Tough. There are like culture deserts all over. So to become art literate requires labor. It requires access and labor. It requires you to have the time to go to LACMA, and even though LACMA is free, to pay $17 for parking, But I think I look at it differently in that I see the collecting class as being kind of like, when I say collecting class, the traditional collecting class, as being very problematic, in the sense that I'm gonna get a little bit kind of semi-intellectual.
It's fine.
So if you look at Nicolas Bourrion, who wrote Relational Aesthetics, which is really just an extension of the Duchampian idea that the artist makes the art, but it's really the viewer that over posterity, over time, creates it by interacting with the art. So like millions of artists create, fewer remembered, but this relationship with the artist who produces the object, and then the viewer that consecrates the object into art. It's a process of refining. It's like taking raw oil out of the ground and then you refine it into gasoline. It's an extensive process. But Nicolas Bourrion, in his book Relational Aesthetics, writes about this in a sort of a more modern way. What happened with the white cube. It's not the artwork that you're looking at, it's the relationship that the viewer has with the artwork that is defining what the artwork is. And therefore, social networks become very important, like if you're in New York and you're in the 80s and you're hanging out with each other and you're looking at the art, that provides the context. And the Y cube gains power. What I believe has happened is with the sheer amount of capital in the business, the rising global inequality, what's happened within the Y cube space, it's no longer the relationship that the viewer has with the art that's defining what the art is. It's the relationship that the viewer has with the other viewer in the space, with the art is now just a prop in the background that is defining what art is. In other words, social hierarchy, the community, the who gets invited to the dinner party, the I only buy this. The art has become background. It has become irrelevant. It's now just become a kind of like a structure. And people feel it because you feel alienated from the art. Like, how do you get back to the art experience?
How does Stefan get back to the art?
Well, I think it's been a struggle. You know, I've had galleries in LA. I opened up a few galleries, ran them, did about 75 solo shows.
I think I poked fun at you the first time.
Yeah,
Up a gallery, and I was just like, hold on a second. You're going to the other side.
I needed to open up a gallery because those guys are funny. Because I needed to give artists an exhibition opportunity without waiting years for galleries to do it. And I was also consigning artwork I'd bought to galleries for shows and was not getting paid and was not being able to get, I had so many horrendous experiences. And also a lot of the galleries would not believe in those artists until they had seen them. So I had to give Shane a first show, you know, just to get them started. And it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I didn't really want to do art fairs, but it was out of frustration of basically convincing galleries to show artists that I believed in. And LA, the galleries in LA have their own particular problems. You know, we had some very successful openings, but the community in LA, especially the institutional community, does not support. They, you know, if you look at the New York Times and look at what artists get covered in the New York Times, it's David Kordansky, it's Gagosian, it's David Kordansky, it's Blum and Poe, it's David Kordansky, it's Gagosian. Almost feel like the journalists, like there's some Swiss bank account. Almost feel like there's some fucking UBS bank account whereby like they get pinged, but they don't. It's even worse. It's done out of just laziness, and it's done out of myopia.
How do you change that?
You don't. It becomes irrelevant naturally. You know how some people cut the balls off a bull? They tie it with a piece of string. Eventually, the balls fall off. What's happening in the mainline system is they've tied the string on their own balls. It's falling off. People don't listen anymore. They don't care. They don't read. People are not stupid. Like every review, it's like, okay, I'm not talking about my gallery. There's great galleries. Why do I have to read why? Why does, why? There's so much interesting stuff happening in LA alone. Why do they have to cover these spaces and nothing else? It's ridiculous.
What are the you mentioned great galleries. What are the great galleries that you think are here?
In LA, Tucker Nonakil, without a doubt. For me, the best gallery in LA, focus on Japanese art. Rodney and Tucker have, it's the most fastidious, focused, defined, disciplined gallery space. Brilliant gallery. Small, incredible. For me, pound for pound, best gallery in LA. Remarkable. I think in the more mainline things, I think Francois Gebali's a good gallery. I think, Kordansky I have a lot of respect for, runs a great operation. I think Blum and Poe's a great gallery. They're good galleries. Blum. I used to call them Bum and Poo because Jeff banned me from the gallery for buying a conceptual artist through a proxy. But Tim's got a good gallery. There are a lot of good galleries, but there are also great galleries like Parker Gallery, who runs a great gallery. Amazing space. There's a lot of good activity in LA.
When's the last time you purchased from a gallery?
I'm embarrassed to say 3 years ago.
Why do you think there's been that gestation period?
I stopped. I didn't receive the support. I go, if you go around town and say who shows up at galleries, I go to galleries. I stop by visit. There wasn't reciprocity. And I sort of, and that lack of reciprocity, I was like, oh, I haven't seen your space yet. I'm a busy guy. I drive to Adams, I stop by, I go to Mills, I see a lot of shit. A lot of people will tell you at the galleries, like one of the few collectors they see who goes across is Simcoe. They see me. And and it's just the lack of reciprocity, and as well as sort of when I work with an artist or engage with an artist, as clockwork, do not work with Stefan Simchowitz for some reason or another. I have emails. I'm publishing a book called Bad Collector. It's a series of self-portraits and redacted emails and communications from these guys.
And is that because of? Do you think that's self-inflicted? Because of
I don't think
your
it's
engagement?
self-inflicted. I don't think they understand the way I work. I think they're threatened by it. I buy work up front. It's a very different system. I pay the artist. I don't consign inventory. So I resell inventory that I purchased because the artists need the money on tap to keep producing, keep their studios open, and keep that consistent production. It's a system. And oftentimes I take artworks, I consign them to galleries. We do work with many galleries. Lily Ramirez, who's an artist from South Central LA, Latino artist, she works with Very Small Fires and Sarah Hantman. So we do collaborate. But I think there was it's not so much financial reciprocity, it's more showing up reciprocity. It's
like somebody coming to this space.
I've spent so much money. I have clients as well. I've built very big collections for people. And then this is, of course, so one of sort of the concepts I have is the duration of exhibitions is so short for artists.
Right.
So, as you know, Shayna sort of occupies 4 spaces. Is I keep this space is a Ken Taylor gallery, and this will be Ken Taylor's gallery for a year. So every show we rotate the work, introducing new works by Ken Taylor. Right. So whoever comes to a cycle of shows over a year, they see Ken Taylor's show. So he's a core artist we work with. That's Serge's room. You saw at the front where Rosie's working. Right. So we can always present a very impressive body of work of an artist, because artists have a show in LA. It's up for 6 weeks. People come to the opening and then it's done. And then no one in it. So really, like, how do you extend the duration? And also when people see a show, like they might come here and they see new paintings by Ken, and they sit and they listen to these Simco One speakers that is one of the best. This is literally one of the best speakers you can get for under 20K in the world today. It's incredible. You've heard it before. Yeah. And this is going to be a good situation.
How do you choose who gets the year-long?
If I like them.
Program? Okay.
I wouldn't say if I like them. I finance a handful of artists, and those relationships have deeper relationships with, and obviously the ones who I finance more, I right. believe in more, yeah. And Ken is an artist who I think is, it's just, look at this. I think he's amazing, and I love being with the work, living with the work.
Where's he from?
He from Bakersfield.
Wow.
The Latino artist, and got so much movement. So Serge, artists who I think also, there's so much churn in the business, so much like churn and burn, like show, and like it's a duration game, and there's
artists got to marinate.
They got to marinate. They got to cook. And this is all the turntables are really amazing. One-off turntables, Dorrance TD 124 and an OMA plinth. All the gear is as well
top notch.
I think it's like the system's big enough now that I've like also decided to focus on bringing people to my space, focus people on sharing my world more.
What do you think they're getting out of their encounter or engagement with Stefan's world, or define what that world is?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the galleries in LA. The galleries in LA, like, the people are lazy. The curators are lazy. They're just lazy. It's they're not
Is
even
it because you don't think they're going to see show? Like, what?
I think they go to Gagosian, they go here, they go to the dinners. They're Banana Republic, basically. With money. A little bit. They're lazy. They're not intrepid. They're not like trying to push the envelope. Also, if you write a review of a Gagosian artist, if you buy an artist with Gagosian and you're at a dinner party, people are like, "Who did you buy?" "Oh, I bought it from Parker Gallery. I bought from Gagosian." That's legible. People want legibility. That's why, like, money is legible to people. People understand music. They understand money. Big pile of money on a table. Oh, there's a lot of money. A small rock on the table from ancient China, not legible. That's worth more than a pile of money. people are legible. So I think the whole system is defined on that. But the institutional, the cures at LACMA, MoCA, Hammer, they don't visit me. They don't.
Is it because of reputation that?
No, it's because they're lazy. They don't go visit anyone. Go to Danny First Cabin. Danny First is a good friend of mine. Run one of the most interesting residency programs. Not one of the most. Let's put it this way: the most interesting residency program, the best residency program that LA has had. He's had everyone through there. Amawakabua, amazing. They don't go on a regular basis, if at all. Many of them, they're lazy. They want to go to Kodansky. They want to see the champagne. They want to see the rich people. They want to see. They're socialites, dressed like intellectuals with PhDs in curatorial studies from some fancy university. I can come up with something that they don't come because they think I'm evil, and they might make that as an excuse. They're not going to say I'm lazy. They'd rather say I'm evil rather than they're lazy. So they come up with some cockamamie bullshit excuse, but it's simple. They're fucking lazy. And they're not intrepid, and they're not looking. And they have mandates, and that mandate either comes from the New York Times that says we're going to cover this now, and those mandates come from Michael Govan. And I like Michael. I think what he's done at LACMA is amazing. But I think it's more vapid than like, I don't think it's like, oh, he's evil and we know who he is. I just think it's like they just don't know what the fuck's going on. It's like they're like basic bitches, basically. Pretty simple. I shouldn't even say that on camera, but I did. Sorry. Apologies. Come visit. I'll take it back. When you come visit, you'll get that basic bitch insult back.
So when people do come and visit, what are you hoping that they get from this experience?
In this experience, I want them to have, and this is where the music comes in, and the fancy audio equipment, is I want them to have an experience that they never forget. And I think a lot of people who've come in here have never heard like beautiful music, like you guys had an emotional experience.
I mean, the speakers are incredible. The music side of the thing.
Yeah, and I want them to have sort of a cultural experience, an art experience, an aesthetic experience, and also an experience that they relate to. Sit down. What's your favorite song? What's something that this woman came here, she was selling me garden furniture. And I sat her down, I said, and she was embarrassed. She was a Christian. She goes, she likes, so I said, don't be embarrassed. Tell me what to play. I played some, a white Christian. I played some music she chose. She was sitting on the couch crying. She had an experience. She never forgot. See art, have an experience, remember. As opposed to white space, have an opening. You've been to some of our openings. Hundreds of people there eating food you're providing for free, looking at each other, socializing, uncomfortably, a space which you can relax, you can feel safe, you can sit on the couch, you can sit here for an hour listening to music. Actually look at Shayna's painting. Start to notice the painting. Yeah. Start to look around. Just slow it down. And I think the integration of art and music is really helpful to do that in a space and provide a different kind of experience, not a white cube sanitized experience, also a lived space, a communal space, a space where you can kind of pop off and chill. And what's great is we've had openings here and people stay for 3-4 hours and they linger. And I think it just, trying to redefine the white cube, which I think, has definitely serviced the business very well over the last, 40 years. But I think we need something different. We've lost a sense of community, of gathering, of openness. Also, I think to invite someone into a space that is private in a sense and welcoming and saying this is how art lives and can live, showing people how art can be in physical space. A lot of clients I have buy things from galleries and they're like, it just looks like shit in their home. And like, it's a $50,000 mistake if they're lucky, a $1 million mistake if they're unlucky. I think it's very, very, I think we need more creative ways to show art, exhibit art. At the same time, give it its provenance on the website. It's a show, it's a gallery, so you provenance it. And LA has very specific problems itself, that are different to New York and Paris and London. It's not safe. There's a huge homeless problem. The retail spaces in LA are in my opinion, I walk on Weston, I know all the galleries are on Weston. The gates, the security, they're not safe spaces. I've had, people who work for me running the gallery be threatened. LA's got some issues that make it much harder to run a white cube space that are problematic in itself, that are social, political, and economic.
So what do you think about the galleries who have come en masse? to LA?
I think a lot of them moved on Western. There's some excitability there. You know, we'll see. I think, you know, I personally have run businesses in LA. I wouldn't want to, yeah, I've had 24-year-old female staff working at my gallery spaces. I don't think it's safe, you know, but, you know, they're nice spaces. It's exciting. People get to see on Alice Neal Short's work. They've invested a good amount of money. I think LA's always been a city, even if you look at the architecture of LA, you know, Switzerland, Zurich, Germany, public architecture, the libraries, the buildings, the office buildings. LA's architecture, the important buildings here are houses. They're the Neutras. They're the, you know, LA's architecture is an architecture of it's a personal architecture. It's a different kind of space. The city's sprawling, but also then gets personalized. Right. Great. So I think there is a space in LA for kind of these intimate spaces. This is a unique space. Katrin Terstegen, the architect who built it, it's 8 structures. Right. It's kind of like a chessboard in an enclosed perimeter.
You close down your other spaces you mentioned to be able to make this vision come to life.
Exactly. I opened them to kind of get that programming run done, and then while we were building this, which took 4 years, you know, I could sort of build some sort of programming runway, and then this.
What was it that you felt you're delivering to the market with this that wasn't there before?
Well, I think what's interesting is more people come here and more fancy people come here. They like the experience. It's much easier somehow to get people to Pasadena to this experience. I just wanted to differentiate. I know the gallerists didn't like me having a gallery. They felt it was like, they really felt that was like
threatening.
Threatening, yeah, and like stepping into their space, which I don't mind doing. And you know, I do have ideas about the gallery system down the line that I think that I will eventually, hopefully, implement. But I think what's different. It's a gallery space, but it's a communal space. It's a space to show art in a different way. It functions like a gallery. It's formal. We have a poster. We have a show. We have an exhibition. But the spaces of the gallery are unused for 6 weeks. I go to the galleries usually not to the openings. I go during the week when no one's there, and I'm looking at these big spaces and they lie empty and vacant. And even this space, what you'll find is people come here, sit on the couch, check their Instagram, send some emails. They'll stay in the space. You know, this idea of walking into a space and you've got a 4,000 square foot space with 10 paintings on the wall and you have to walk 200 feet to see each painting as if each thing is important. It's offensive. Sit down, look around. You're important. The art's important. So try and equalize the kind of the dialogue and the, you know, and I think it works. And also the outdoor space is also kind of like plant life and materials. Spent a lot of focus on making sure that the material and the plants are very heavily curated as well. And then this is the pool house, which is, this is called the pool house, but it's also an amazing exhibition space because, you know, so we have 2 artists in town from South Africa. One is a designer, one is an artist, Cameron Platter. They're here currently they just arrived. They're in residency for a month.
Okay, awesome.
I just went to Vegas for a few days. So Ben will sleep here, Cameron will sleep here. So the place is literally activated with people, you know, all the time, constantly. And of course, this is an exhibition of Shayna's small works on paper. You know, really formally an exhibition, really, but also a bed and a space.
You've thought a lot about how you put this together. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think your passion for the taxes, which you go at this art market?
I'm just an aesthetic. I'm just an aesthetic. I want things to be aesthetically pleasing. I like culture. I want the music. I want the art. I want the architecture. I'm aesthetic. The clothes. You know, so I had a banker here yesterday, and she's like, "Well, you dressed funny to differentiate yourself from people and to say you're different." I said, "No, I dressed that way because I love Bernhard Wilhelm and I love Paul. I didn't dress to show that I'm different. I dress because these are people who are masters of design who very few people wear, and like that's why I wasn't doing it to say I'm different and better than you. I wore them because they make amazing things that I enjoyed wearing. It was interesting listening to a perception. And then we'll come through the main house. So we have 2 kitchens. This is again a workspace kitchen. You find people working it. I really like learned how people live and work in space.
Right.
So you go to a lot of houses. They're big and they're impressive. Big dining room. This is my dining room. People don't live in these spaces. I live and work with people in spaces, so I kind of know what you need. People come, why do you have 2 kitchens? I'm like, don't you see 3 people sitting here working? like people are. I think the way people live and the way people design their life space, their living space, their workspace, they're disconnected. All the spaces are built for show today. They're not built for go. And we need to get back to using art to live with,
using the space as well.
Pa Joe sculpture, everything. Yeah, Pa Joe. These cups are made by an artist. So it's really like everything is sort of.
What's that sculpture?
Jean-Marie Prou, amazing artist. Amazing artist.
Wow. From?
French.
Really?
French. Successful. Well-known artist. Jean-Marie Prou. That's his fly.
That's a part of the collection.
Yeah.
Who's this?
This is Ken Taylor.
Ah, from the other.
Yeah.
From the other space. Wow.
Yeah.
That looks different than the work
That's Ken Taylor.
He's got range.
This is Jean-Marie Prou. This is me. This I bought from a guy who works at a Japanese restaurant who's a sous chef who makes sculptures. So he just brought it over and I bought it.
Based here? Or?
Based here in Pasadena. So I'm going to give it to a friend of mine's daughter because she surfs. And then this is a sculpture. This is a cool looking sculpture. These are these bears by Justin Lieberman that you'll see everywhere. What you'll notice about the house is it's full of art and objects everywhere. On the desk is that ship, the ceramic, the Serge Tukwe Klati, Zachary Armstrong painting, Mofa Takidawa. I'm maybe going too fast, but it's good. People can pause in the YouTube and see what it is. Yeah. Hi, Danko, how are you? Nice to see you. Oh, good. This is a beautiful bathroom. I love it. Disney wallpaper.
Who's on the wall?
It's Disney. I bought.
But the paintings?
No, the painting is an artist from Ireland we work with.
Okay.
But look at Disney wallpaper is a great little trick to use. Looks beautiful.
Who's this?
That's Emma Stern, Lava Baby.
Lava Baby on the gram?
Lava Baby on the gram. This is, hi guys, Julia Danko.
Hey, Julia.
Cesarina Faro.
Hello. Sean.
My inner circle.
Hey. Nice
David Altman. This is Jean Ahern. These are a gift from the artist who just arrived from South Africa, Cameron Platter. And Cesarina is a longtime friend and associate and collaborator. And Julia is a good friend.
This?
This is Julian Pache.
Julian Pache.
Yeah. So David effectively runs the Africa operation, and he runs and his partners in the Cape Town Art Residency in Cape Town. Danko works in logistics and artist negotiations. A very tough negotiator, very tough.
So as a negotiator, what does that actually mean?
Just a relationship with an artist.
Okay.
Being friendly, translating.
Like a liaison.
Yeah.
Well, I buy a lot of work.
Yeah.
So there's negotiating. I generally, buy the work up front.
And would you rather negotiate with her or with him? So he's smart, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Who would you rather? Yeah, she's
Right.
nice.
I'd likely choose her. I've known you too long. We didn't talk about who little Stefan
Little.
was. Little.
God.
Like younger Stefan. Who is he? You showed me a picture earlier on.
Little Stefan was like my mother and father got divorced when I was like 5, 6 years old. Grew up in South Africa. Was brought up by a black woman named Dora Lenkwa. She was more important to me than my grandmother. When she died, I cried. When my grandmother died, I didn't. Just to put things in perspective. I shouldn't admit that on camera, but I will, because I'm evil. But so, South Africa was really, and then I left to go to boarding school. My parents got divorced. My mother moved to England, and I went to boarding school when I was 6, 7 years old. Room, 24 kids, bunk, beds next to each other. Proper English boarding school, like Harry Potter style. So I went back to South Africa when I was 10, 11, went to a Christian school, St. John's, was bullied every day because I was Jewish, anti-Semitic, actually physically bullied, went to a Jewish day school, was bullied there because I was different, because I was, I'd had a very interesting life already. A bunch of guys broke my leg very, very badly. I was in a full leg plaster for a year. I then started doing karate, got strong, and then I said to my parents when I was 15, I want to leave the country. And I literally put myself in boarding school in Connecticut, in a place called Kent. Junior, senior year, graduated summa cum laude, applied to Stanford, got in, came to California. Started watching movies on Laserdisc. I met a guy in my dorm, John Kahn. His brother was a first AD to Joel Silver, who was making movies like Die Hard. And they sort of introduced me to the movie business. And I applied to AFI, went to AFI when I was 21, started a production company. And I remember calling Bernie Wolfstorff, my immigration lawyer, because I needed a visa. My father's very sort of independent. He put a couple of $100,000 in a bank when I was like 15. And he said, you pay for everything. So I'd write the checks for high school. I'd write the checks for, he's like, this is it. I'd write the checks for college. And that was it. And so I went to AFI and I went to Bernie. I needed a visa. And it was interesting because I'd always hustled. I became a resident in Portugal. None of my family was, so I could travel. It was sort of figured out. And Bernie said, well, there's a status called persons of extraordinary ability, and you don't have to wait around for a green card. It takes like 6 months. So I'm like, what do I need to do? He's like, you need to make some movies. So I said, okay, how many? He says, 3. I said, okay, I'll do it. And he laughed at me. I met Scott Silver at AFI. He wrote a script for me called John's. Paid him very little money, but he could direct the movie. It was with David Arquette and Dukas Haas. We produced it on the streets of, Adams, about male prostitutes. And we won the San Sebastian Film Festival. We won $600,000, which was the whole cost of the movie. It was interesting. And that was the first movie. And I made another one, Little City, with John Bon Jovi, Penelope, and I became an independent film producer, successful. My partner is a guy named Beau Flynn. We met. He was working for Scott Rudin, a legendary producer, both on Broadway and film. And we created Bandera Entertainment. And then Spielberg came along. He had just launched DreamWorks. Amblin Entertainment became DreamWorks, and they gave us what's called a first look deal. Right. And we were like in my mid-20s, had a deal with Spielberg. And Kate Capshaw, his wife, had a project she wanted to make with Maria Magenta, a writer-director. And Maria Magenta was the director. And so we had this experience with DreamWorks, with Spielberg, with, and that was my early 20s. So I met everyone in the film business. We were hot young producers driving around in the Cadillac, 2 phones, shooting non-union projects in San Francisco, crazy shit, getting shut down by unions in San Francisco. Gavin Newsom was head of Parks and Recreation, called Gavin, I'm in a bind, I'm parked in, it was great, fun.
Where does this hustle, tenacity come from? Given most people who have the privileged experience don't have that same drive.
I think, my father's a very tough guy. He's one of these, he's successful, but he's kind of the kind of Clint Eastwood successful, you know you know what I mean, like the movie character successful, like fierce and tough, like real tough, not like play tough. And I think also, I think it just comes from that. It's like a combination of, it was, you know, I call him Manny, never called him Dad. He's a competitor, not a, you know, friend and a competitor more than a dad. And I just think it's like, you know, a lack of a number of things, of not being like pampered, also South African, also boarding school. Like, you know, when you're 6, 7 in boarding school, and then you go back and then you're bullied, and even though you're from an affluent family, you're always uncomfortable. And when I was uncomfortable, I mean, these kids broke my, like, I experienced anti-Semitism, physical anti-Semitism, not like you fucking Jew, but like, I've been beaten up by being Jewish many times. It's not like, hey, I live in Beverly Hills and someone said something nasty about Jews and Zionists. Like, I've experienced it, but I've also been to the Jewish day school where they're like, you're a little different. You're like, you went to boarding school, you got an English accent, you've like traveled the world and been to like the Cala de Volpe in Sardinia. We don't like you, you're different, we're gonna break your fucking leg. So I've had like both experiences. So I understand tribalism, and I think those early experiences as a kid really informed like what I see in the art world, which is tribalism and exclusion and judgment. And I think this is like something always been with me as a kid. I remember when I'd go to Buckingham Palace with my dad, because he lived in London, we'd go to Hard Rock Cafe, get hot. I never liked them at Buckingham. I'm like, why does the Queen live there? I don't like the Queen. I don't understand. Why she got the big house? I never, and I think it just comes from like, whether it's a chip on the shoulder, whether it's, you know, like, how do you motivate someone? I don't know. My son, he's 16. He goes to the gym every day, went to boxing. He's very disciplined, never eats sugar. I think it's like, I think like what as well my father taught me, I come from, is that the things in life you need to get, you can't buy. You just can't buy them. Money doesn't buy that shit. Yeah, money buys you a nice car, a nice house, you know, when you want to go. But it doesn't buy the shit you actually need. And understanding that, I think as difficult as my father was, I think he taught me that, you know? And he's a guy, fancy guy, lives in Bel Air, goes when, you know, he's older now, but he would go running in Santa Monica on the beach, and he would shower at the beaches, you know, with the homeless people. Sometimes I'd have friends, oh, your dad, is he okay? I saw him showering in the morning with some homeless people at the beach. I'm like, he's fine. He's, you know, he's that guy.
He's in his own lane.
He's in his own lane. He's that guy, you know. The guy at the newsstand would watch rugby fans. My father, in the old days, tape on VHS, go give the guy at the newsstand the VHS of the rugby. He's that kind of guy. He was never the guy who like spent his whole life just trying to hang out with rich people or famous people, which is effectively what most people who are wealthy, who I know today, do. They just are in this sort of upward trajectory of trying to hang out. That's why this white cube social spaces, they become richer, they just want to hang out with rich people. They become famous, they want to hang out with, it's like, instead of being like, I'm rich, I can do what I can stay in my lane, and I can hang out, I can do what I want. They become the opposite. They become sycophants, social climbers, worse after COVID than ever before. And it's an amazing thing to watch.
Your father has left a big imprint on you, right? And I would say
both good and bad. Both good and bad.
And your parents do tend, you know, to leave a particular imprint. Who's somebody outside of your parents that has had a great impact on who Stefan is?
I mean, who's like close to me? Rosie, you know, my partner, my wife, huge, of course. She, you know, she grew up in Austria. Parents migrated. Father was very tough, abusive. I shouldn't even say that, but tough, and, you know, poor. Grew up on a sheep farm in South Australia. 5 brothers and sisters, working family. And she's really taught me like the value of family, the value of working together, hard work. She's an amazing woman, a huge imprint. Also watching how the family, to protect itself, works together. You saw her brother here, you know, came from Australia, works with me. So we've really built a family business. Rosie's the CEO operationally. We have about 40, 45 people in the company now. And then there was a guy in South Africa named Johnny Clegg, famous musician. Johnny Clegg and Jaluka, they called him the White Zulu. and he became a friend of mine. Legendary South African musician. He was an anthropologist, and he sort of studied the 12 pathways to become a man as a Zulu. He had a big impression on me as someone who's an outsider. Incredible, incredible guy. But I think a combination of things, and I think, you know, I consume. I'm very interested in learning. So one of the things that philosophy I have is Lao Tzu, who's a Confucius Chinese thinker. I'm very interested in ideas. Confucius was living in China in the olden days, fighting each other. It's called the Warring Periods. They're killing each other. China was a mess. Civil war, basically. And Confucius was this problem. I need something. We need a code to order things. Be respectful to your parents. Be respectful. He ordered society. It's called the analects. They were like strips. Non-sequential. People have put them together in an organized way. How society can sort of stabilize itself. You know, and I think it took hundreds of years for Confucius thinking to kind of develop. And there were guys like Mencius and Lao Tzu who were sort of, they refined Confucian thinking. And it was a way of being and living unrelated to someone like waking up in the middle of the night and being like, I spoke to someone in the sky who gave me a message telling me I'm the Messiah. You know, it was a logic, pragmatic system. And Lao Tzu, who's one of the sort of disciples of Confucius, has this thing called the path of the gentleman, the way, the Dao Shui. And it's the idea that a man must learn his whole life, the journey and the path, whether you know, oftentimes you'll study something and someone will say, well, how are you going to make money from that? You don't need to make money from it. The path is to learn. And this kind of like idea that you only do things in order to make money is problematic. So you have your business, your life, your family, but the Dao Shui, that path of knowledge is very important because it passes on knowledge to your friends and family. It sort of organizes society and systems. So I think like a mix of ideas and thinking and principles. You know, I think the thing about culture is like an art production and all of it, music, it sort of sits atop as the sort of, someone once said, the roof is the story, and the roof is culture, and the floor is the systems, it's the math, it's the tech, it's the freeway, it's the road, it's the car. But the only way we relate to the floor is if we have a story. And my participation, my role, you know, while I'm alive, is to help build the roof, is to help construct the roof, or be part of that roof building process. And that roof is weak. It's constantly weak because throughout history, that roof gets attacked, and that roof gets attacked by forces that are truly evil, fascist forces, because to control the roof is to control the narrative. Right. And so, you know, you can either, you sort of, I see my role as helping keep the roof not leaking, basically.
As you think about, you know, your role, you've had role as a collector, role as a dealer. Talk to me about your role as a politician.
I mean, it was just, you know, I have this friend, Jack Kimball. Amy Capolazzo is, you know, Amy Capolazzo.
Yeah, she's a friend.
Yeah, powerful woman in the probably the most powerful woman in the office. She calls me and she says, my godson, Jack, is 23-year-old young man, amazing. Once, you know, I told him he should come work for you. He was working with Sadie Coles. You know, he was in the institutional system. And Jack is an amazing guy. His mother's Holly Peterson. She writes for the New York Times. And his grandfather was Pete Peterson, who created Blackstone, which was sold to BlackRock. You know, major guy. And he came to work for us on the CAP side, Creative Art Partners, which is our rental business. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, there's an open primary. There's a jungle primary. Dianne Feinstein's seat's open. And I've always been interested in politics. Like, if you want to have a go, like now's an opportunity for you to run for Senate. So it's like, why not? Let's try it. October 7th happened, and I was like, you know, I always get kind of like, not bored, but I always like want to try new things. So I said, I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He says, I'll help you do it. And he's young, but he knows politics. So I'm like, okay, we'll do it. And we went through the procedure, Norwalk getting the filing fees, the bank account, and I just thought it was interesting to learn and go through that process. And again, it's like, I had no chance of winning because I spent $3,500. I mean, but still, I didn't. You learn the process. You go to the meetings. Central Committee of the Republican Party invites you to these events. I ran as a Republican because I see no point in running as a Democrat because everyone's a Democrat, and I figure rather improve the Republican Party than just be another do-gooding Democrat. So I'm like not very Republican in my ideas, but I figure now that I've joined the Republican Party is slightly better than it was the day before. Instead of like those guys are evil, and they're not evil. They're all good, and
They're not all good.
they're not all good. But the Democrats aren't all good either. And it was a really great experience. Learned a lot. Was invited to it's not glamorous. You go to the Best Western, you meet Central Committee, you speak. You go to the Bakersfield Country Club. Again, getting access to things that you learn from is interesting. And maybe one day when I make a little more money, become more successful in my 60s, if there's another opening, I'll do something. I've got some young friends who are politically ambitious. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they'll hire me for a job.
Well, until then, there's a lot more art world for you to conquer. And as I think about a lot of the artists that you have represented here and that we've discussed, I'd like to be able to ask you from the hip hop perspective, because we love our music, and the music that you've played here today has been amazing. But taking the hip hop reference of top 5 dead or alive, who's Stefan Simchowitz's top 5 artists?
Tape music.
Top 5 artists, dead or
Oh,
alive.
artists.
Visual artists.
Visual artists.
Yeah.
Do
You want a riff?
Top 5 visual artists, dead or alive. God, that's so difficult, so unfair. It's so unfair. H.C. Westerman. You know H.C. Westerman?
I don't know, but you got another 4 after that one.
H.C. Westerman's great sculptor. He's like, so there were 2 veins of American pop. There was like the Andy Warhol pop, which is like mass pop, and then like the personalized pop of like Peter Saul and H.C. Westerman. I've always loved his work. This is so difficult. Top 5. I mean, it's so tough. It's so impossible to do this. This is so unfair. But I'll go for the Futurists.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go for Umberto Boccioni.
Okay.
Futurists. I like Boccioni. We'll pick one futurist. And then we'll pick difficult. I'm going to pick Sterling Ruby because I think he's great and he's modern. I'll give you someone contemporary who I think is like a god.
Mm-hmm. Power player?
David Hammonds.
Yeah,
For
fantastic
sure.
pick.
David Hammond, the god, master.
Yeah.
Master. Hammonds is very special. And then I got to pick one more.
Very special.
One more. Let me go. I'll take Louise Bourgeois.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Great top 5. And now, as my last question, you're hosting a dinner.
Yeah.
We mentioned lunch and dinner and
Yeah.
food and gathering.
Yeah.
You can choose one visual artist and one musical artist to
Yeah.
be your guest.
Yeah.
Who would they be and what would you serve?
One visual artist.
One musical artist.
One visual artist.
To have dinner with Stefan.
Caravaggio.
Caravaggio, wow. Mm-hmm.
I'd have to serve like roast leg of lamb with like Yorkshire pudding and like roast potatoes for him, I think, with some mint jelly, because I'm sure he'd like something bloody. And then one musical artist. Mozart.
Wow. Caravaggio, Mozart, and Stefan Simchowitz at a table.
Having leg of lamb.
I like it. I like it. Well, I appreciate you carving out the time to have this conversation.
Thank you so much. And everyone's welcome to come visit. This place is open.
It's open. It's awesome. We've had fun here.
Thank you.